called to order. If everyone could please rise for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and we'll first start with the approval of the minutes from the March 20th meeting. Did any planning commission members have any comments, concerns? I think the only thing I want to point out, Todd, was under the approval of the minutes section, the date of the meeting minutes is March 20th versus the January meeting date. So I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes pending an update to that date. Is there a motion to second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and then up next, we have public comment. Does anyone from the audience have any comments? All right. Up next, we have subdivision and land development plans. First up is James Powers, Robert and Karen Almany. And so I guess, Bill, are you speaking on behalf of that?
Bill Robinson, 18147 Amanda Lane. We've been to staff. I think we're in pretty good shape there. We have a couple modification requests that we've submitted. And from, I think we have support from staff on those modifications. Not sure if you want to go into that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything other than, as Phil mentioned, staff does support the modification request. And just for the sake of the public, you might want to just run, do you have the three of them in front of you?
I did. Not widen the portion of Tolna Road, not install curbs, and not install sidewalks. If you're familiar with that portion of Tolna Road, there are no sidewalks or curbs there now. They would basically be sidewalks and curbs that pretty much go to nowhere, and just past the property, Interstate 83 goes over top of Tolna Road, so it just wouldn't make sense to do that on that side. And let's see, 3 modifications.
All right, any questions from planning commission members? No? And then Todd, you said staff is supportive?
Yeah, the only thing I will note is typically the Board of Supervisors adds a note to the plan. I don't think that's on yet. Regarding curbs and sidewalks, if they will grant those modifications, but their note typically has to be added that they have to install curb and sidewalk within 6 months' notice from the township.
And we
If
agree
there's
to
a
that.
need
We
in
were
the
just looking
future.
for the language. We agree to that. We were just looking for the language. If we can have that, we'll make sure it's on the plan.
Okay.
And will that recommendation go with the preliminary and final subdivision plan, or does that go with the modification request?
It could be both. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I put it with the modification, since you're granting it, but you're gonna have a note added. That's the condition under which you're granting it, there'll be a note on the plan.
Okay. Then, okay, would
Or I
any,
should say, recommend approval.
all right, would anybody from the planning commission then like to make a motion on the modification requests?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend that it gets passed to the Board of Supervisors, meeting all the requests that we just spoke of.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Would you like to add a second motion with the 6-month note for both the curbing and the sidewalk?
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, good, well, I guess, was that included in mine?
That was not,
Oh, okay, I thought you
unless
said,
that was your intent then.
yeah, you said all of that was discussed,
Okay.
so. Okay. So we just have to make another motion?
No, if that was the intent. then-
Yes, that was the intent.
And we're fine with that. We agree with that.
All right, and then up next, we have to make a recommendation for the preliminary and final subdivision plan. I guess, Todd, were there any outstanding items for that?
There, nothing of any significance, and again, if the planning commission chooses to make a recommendation to approve, I would make it on the condition that all the comments, within the C.S. Davidson review letter dated March 25th, 2024, are addressed prior to recording.
All right. Any comments from planning commission members? All right, would anybody like to make a motion?
I'm happy to make that motion. I would make a motion that we recommend passing of the preliminary and final subdivision plan to the Board of Supervisors, subject to any conditions left to be met at that time.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil.
And then up next, we have Aldi.
All right. Well, good evening. My name's Adam Anderson. I'm with Site Design Concepts. I'm representing the final land development plan this evening for Aldi. This project should look familiar to most of you at least. This is the former Tom site and the last piece of this redevelopment project. There it is. Okay. So this is 83. This is East Forest Avenue, and the diverging dining that was just installed is right here. This is the location of where Tom's used to be. So if you've driven past the site recently, you've noticed that there's a big retaining wall going up, and that's being installed per the preliminary LD plan that had been approved previously. And fortunately, through that process, we had anticipated all these coming on board, and they finally came on board. So not much change between the preliminary plan and the final plan. And then this area over here is the rural farms that's being built right now. So the site is zoned commercial. Retail grocery store is permitted use in the commercial district. The building's about 19,400 square feet. We have paved parking areas, a loading space in the back of the building right here. And stormwater facilities, we have 2 stone underground seepage beds here and over here, public utilities. So it was all queued up with the preliminary plan. So if there's any, if there's questions on the plan, that we do have 8 modifications or waiver requests to go through.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay, all right. So many of them were actually the same as what came through with the preliminary plan. So I'll just march down through them here. They're all part of the landscape ordinance. So the first one, which is 12-110-5A, which requires a 35-foot perimeter buffer along collector streets. So that was waived with the preliminary plan and with the final plan for rural farms, which would require this 35-foot strip here. So with it being commercial use and with the massive amount of earth moving in the back of the site, we had requested that waiver previously. The next one is 12-110-5. First one was 5A, this one's 5B, which requires a 10-foot wide landscape buffer to separate adjacent developments. So that would be right along this property line, which is actually where the joint access drive is with rural farms. The third waiver is section 12-111-2A1, which requires 1 planting island every 10 spaces. So we've actually modified it since this plan came through, I believe. Yeah, okay. So talking to staff and the zoning officer, the number of parking spaces that we thought were required are actually reduced. So it's based on the retail floor area, not the gross floor area. So what we've done since this plan is we've eliminated these 2 right here and have this space so we have 10 on center. So this is, the waiver request is really for these guys along the front here. And a bunch of these all tie together. So instead of a planted island, we have a painted island. And that's for shopping carts and things like that, operations. Let's see here. Yeah, so the same thing for section 12-11-2C requires the planting island. The 5th waiver, section 12-11-2D, which requires planting islands to contain 1 shade tree. So what we've done is there's a couple islands around this area that we didn't propose a shade tree. So what we're proposing is those 3 trees, we're planting them in the back of the building here. So it's the required number, just not in the location as per the ordinance. The 6th waiver, which is section 12-11.3, requires divider strips at every other bay. So technically, this parking space, or this parking aisle here, needs to have a 10-foot wide vegetated strip there, which pushes everything into the hillside. And what we're trying to do is maintain the access points with the rural farms here. And the last one is section 12.111.4, which requires plantings between buildings and parking areas. So that pertains to these curbside pickup, or yeah, the curbside right here, needing planting islands here, and then along these couple parking spaces up here. And again, that's because of cart return, the operations with the curbside pickup, and then the ADA maneuvers. So I believe I don't
So,
want to speak for
I have a
staff.
question, Adam.
Yes.
So can you show me, is there any vegetation left on this thing except these trees in the back?
Oh, no, there is.
There is,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah, yep, here, let's go to the landscape plan. We actually had trouble finding enough space to put all these trees. So you can see, so we have trees all along the front here,
Okay,
trees along the back. There are now 3 trees right here, and then we have shrubbery around so basically it's
Okay.
all toward the perimeter.
all right. Because when we were talking about nothing on the perimeter so we could see, I understood that, but I was like, wow, that's gonna be really stark.
Yeah, right.
But
No,
there's
yeah.
still vegetation,
Yes,
even
right.
with the modification.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
Okay.
the ordinance has a lot, it requires a lot
It's
of
a lot,
landscaping, yeah.
yep, no, I understand, okay.
Any other questions? No? All right, well then, do we want to act on the modification requests?
Yep.
All right, well, I guess I'll make a motion to recommend, to the Board of Supervisors, the modification requests. And so is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and then we have the final land development plan, and know there was a C.S. Davidson letter addressed March 28th, and then there was a follow-up response to that on April 10th. And so are there still any outstanding items from the March 28th letter?
No, so in your motion, the follow-up is from site design. So in your motion, you would want to make it conditioned that all the C.S. Davidson comments are addressed in the March 28th, 24 review letter.
Okay. All right, do you have any questions? Or does somebody want to make a motion?
I'm happy to make that motion, that we recommend approval by the Board of Supervisors, subject to the comments in the March 28th, 2024 letter by C.S. Davidson.
And do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Adam.
very much.
All right, and then up next, we have New Haven with modification requests.
Okay. You want these back, Phil?
No, you can get it.
I don't mind giving it back.
Thank you.
Where is this? This is...
This project is actually between 2 different municipalities. The actual new home creation is in New Freedom Borough right now, but we are building an access road through Shrewsbury Township. The property is in the suburban residential receiving area. The last page in here I gave you shows the zoning on that property. It's the largest piece of suburban residential receiving ground in the township. And eventually, we'd like to develop that too, but that's, we're looking for sewer and a lot of other things. So right now, this plan is just to build the road through the township, and so we have 5 waiver requests. And then we also are up for a zoning variance, but I can go through the waiver requests first. If you look at the property, you see that it's definitely agricultural in nature, and the portion in Shrewsbury Township isn't changing. We're gonna still gonna be farmed. It'll be in crops this year, and in fact, some of it's gonna be in a big vegetable garden, but that's beside the point. But the waivers we're asking, or modifications we're asking for is no environmental assessment. And our position on that is we're really not doing anything on this property yet in Shrewsbury Township. When we come in to develop it, we'll do that, but it just seems like an added expense that we don't need to deal with right now when we're not really doing any real development there. Widening of Kirshner Road. Again, it makes no sense to widen Kirshner Road for this project because all the development's going to be in New Freedom Borough, and you can see where that municipal line is. It separates the two. No recording of a drainage easement. Again, later on when we're actually doing a real development in Shrewsbury Township, when someday sewer's available or we can develop it, we're fine with doing that. We just don't want to go through that right now and interfere with the agricultural use. No curbs on Kirshner Road and no sidewalk on Kirshner Road. So those are our 5 waiver requests, and that's where we are right now. And if you flip back, you can see the Concord Drive would be coming in from New Freedom and connect with Kirshner Road. And the yellow highlighted area is actually the critical environmental area. So you can see we really aren't developing that part of the world.
What's the purpose of putting this road in right now, I guess, for safety and fire, allowing 2 exits?
New Freedom requires 2 exits.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Even though the current development doesn't really have 2 exits, but.
We're making it better. You're exactly right.
So this is gonna be an open road all the time, it's not gonna be just for
No.
emergencies?
And initially, and this is something we've worked with staff and the township on, initially it was gonna be a private road, but now I think the concept is it's gonna be a public road, it's gonna be adopted, and there'll be an intergovernmental agreement between Shrewsbury Township and New Freedom Borough that Shrewsbury Township will collect the liquid fuels, but New Freedom Borough will plow the road.
Do all other maintenance as well.
Do all other maintenance, right. So it's actually gonna be under New Freedom Borough's maintenance requirements, but through an intergovernmental agreement between the township and the borough. So
That'll probably change when you develop the rest of the property.
that's how it's structured, that it can change once, if hopefully someday we do, this is really where building rights should be going to in the township. This is where they're supposed to be going to, and if we can eventually develop it, that's where they would go to. And at that point, then the township would take over maintenance of the road.
Ms. Dodd, were there any comments from staff, concerns?
No, pretty much the same as the last. Staff did support all the comments, including the no curb and no sidewalk, not requiring any note at this time, simply because the tract in the township portion is not being developed at this point. And again,
Is there any need for any kind of stormwater or anything for this?
We have all the stormwaters being developed for the road.
Okay.
We have a full NPDS permit, we've applied to DEP, all that stuff's getting done. It's just that we aren't actually developing anything in the township. And in fact, we're gonna maintain ownership of the stormwater basins in the township portion of it. And eventually, again, when we go to develop it, we may be redesigning those basins, but for right now, they're designed to handle what's being built right now. And we've been through that with staff and New Freedom through joint meetings.
yeah, the township engineer has reviewed the road plans, stormwater, and so forth, so it's been addressed.
So would we like to make a motion on
I
the?
guess, Sherry, should we see if there's any public comment? Because there's quite a few
Oh,
homeowners here.
yeah, you can come up, if, you can come on up and if you can, say your name.
Hi, how's it going? I normally don't find myself on this side of the aisle. My name is Chris Agazarian. I live on 1239 Kirchner Road, and I'm a professional engineer for the state of Maryland, and I'm also licensed in the state of Pennsylvania. I'm here with other fellow residents of Kirchner Road. We have many concerns with you guys voting for whether or not they should put a new road connecting a development behind us onto Kirchner Road. Some of the questions we have, I have photos and details. Like I said, I am a licensed engineer in both Pennsylvania and in Maryland of, one, the deterioration of Kirchner Road, two, the underdesigned size of Kirchner Road. We don't want to say it's because this new development going in. There has been a lot of development from New Freedom with putting in those townhouses, as well as, I believe, the one that's put up by the old boys' school where you had to put in a light is, what's that called? Is that New Hope? Or, anyways, there was another development that was put in. So me personally, yes, I have a bias because I do have a lot there. Since I've moved in, I've been there for a decade. I've lost over 500 linear feet of roadway from people driving on my grass. I also have seen multiple instances where other residents, I know that if they're working on another development with a tractor, I've seen them almost get several times. We also have new neighbors that use horse and buggies. We've seen them almost get hit. And it's not something we want to just throw this road idea out if it has to go in, and especially when they do get the permission to get the sewer increased to widen address Kirchner Road. So if you put the sewer system in and putting the other things like 85 additional houses that would have gone in from the original, I think it was 116. We understand that they need access. We'd be open up, if it'd be possible, essentially make Kirchner Road, old Kirchner Road, close it and put all the truck traffic and let them design a new road and handle it. Because the way it sits, I mean, if you guys have ever gone down Kirchner Road, it used to be a dirt road. You guys tarred and chipped it many years ago and it's fallen apart. A current pothole that is 10 feet from my mailbox is 4 feet wide, 6 inches deep, and 20 feet long. You guys have patched it 4 times. That asphalt has ended up in my grass, in my pasture, and I've hit it with my mower. So like I said, I do have my own personal biases. We just would really like this evaluated for other later development, or even, like I said, considering closing off Kirchner Road and let them develop a new road going through their development. It's not that we don't see the need for future development. And as for critical wetlands, so I built my house in 2017, and the flack that I got for development was ridiculous with being 300 feet, because that's Cador's State Park. That's South Branch of Cador's River that's right there, which is a protected river, which is why it's environmentally sensitive. Some other issues we've had is the previous owner was notified. If you look at a topograph map, exactly where they're putting all these houses is in a valley, and it goes right down my property, right towards my well. In heavy rains, we get more than an inch or so an hour. As it currently stands, you can actually watch the water go down the trail there and flow right past my well. So I have concerns about what roadway runoff is coming. I know it's tough to see. I have other pictures. Like I said, I being an engineer myself, I was actually able to go out and do my own surveys for it. Yeah. So if you follow the curve up, the topograph map where the hills are pointing down, I have that triangle piece of the property. And then another family that's here, they also own the biggest section of Kirchner Road. Besides them, they've also lost a significant portion of their property due to people driving off the road, including being ran off by, they had an ambulance come and people wouldn't move over. So we just have concerns with Kirchner Road itself is functionally obsolete. We don't want to be adamantly domained, but we know it is. Right now, line-wise, it's 9'6" without any lines. That is what you have for the asphalt. Your out-to-out is 18 feet 6 inches. So there's not that much room for this more development. It's not so much the additional houses are putting in, but you're also giving access to all the Amazon drivers, all the delivery guys that are also going to come down from the development that now have access to our road as well. It's just Kirchner Road itself is undersized. I know you guys did a traffic study because I saw you guys put the line down. I know exactly what it is. I've dealt with this in the past. Like I said, I'm normally on the other side of the aisle, so sorry for the constant chatter. And sorry for you guys that unfortunately I was familiar with because of what's going on. Are there any other questions for you guys for me, or?
I haven't seen the pictures you brought.
Yeah, I've got a whole bunch. I can show you the spall, or not spall, the So I've also lost, since being here, I've lost 3 black walnut trees are getting ready to go over, and 2 of them had to be cut out where they fell over and blocked the creek. My creek, so I own 500 feet of riverbank, has degraded down 3.5 feet since I've been there. So this is just the woods. That's not gonna be too. That's just trash going down from the property. That's the old. It's hard to see, but there's a cut coming in here, and it goes. So as you come out of the trail, it comes. My well's right in the line with it. And if any of you guys want to meet with me out at my property, and definitely go through. But I definitely want to show you guys the spall, or it's not spall.
I can pass these down.
Now, if I could address, and I appreciate your concerns with the pothole, but that really isn't a matter for the planning commission. Regarding maintenance of the road and as far as closing and so forth, that would fall under the board of supervisors. Planning commission doesn't have any authority to address those particular matters.
That's the edge of asphalt, that's where people can drive. And I'm aware
Okay.
of that, this is just to let you guys know that the road is already inadequate for what traffic is getting now. I know the traffic count's gonna say it's low, but you gotta remember, it's an old, dirt road that was just hard and chipped over. Like, there's no, this sod base there isn't there. The district, or who I call it, called district, had put down a gabion stone to try to stabilize the base, then paved over, and even that's broken off. We're getting a lot of people driving on the edge, and you can see the cracks. So the middle of the road's fine, but as soon as you get to the edge, you see people's tires are putting that stress, and it's just pulling the road apart. So I know that's for maintenance, but my concern is, okay, so now we put another road there. It's not just these houses here, it's everybody behind it who's, ooh, now I can go this way. It's your delivery drivers, everything else. Which then goes to the need to widen Kirk Road. Which then you're really burning my bridges, because that's my pasture, so I have just under 7 acres that you guys are gonna buy out, because you're gonna widen it to meet code.
I don't know what the road right of way is there now. I don't know.
Yeah, when I looked, it was there, you guys didn't know that much. Just essentially.
I mean, as far as the road improvements and so forth,
It's not part of this.
Right by the
okay,
railroad
yeah,
tracks and the
because-
rail trail.
Well, I know it's coming.
yeah, yeah.
That's all.
Well,
I'm
that's what I'm
saying,
just
yeah.
saying is,
Yeah.
again, that's not part of this particular plan. Now, if and when they go to develop this and put lots in, then that's when we can address as a township whether road improvements are made. And if they are made, the ordinance only requires that they be made along the portion of the property that's being developed, not the entire road. So, you know, have to talk to the township to address the other concerns, but.
Yeah, because even if you guys are familiar with this road, even on the other side, the amount of accidents you have on that blind 90-degree, that's why we open, just close that section, call it Old Kirchner if you want, and make that, and let them have a new road going through. You make us all happy.
Yeah.
The amount of accidents, there's a.
Yeah, that portion's in Railroad Borough, so we don't have any
Yeah.
authority over that. But, and again, as far as proposal to close a road, that's an issue for the Board of Supervisors, so.
We just wanted to make our comments concerned, because that it's not just me up here.
Okay. And that's fine, I just wanna make sure you're not expecting some kind of
No, no,
response
no,
from them on
no,
that, so,
it's-
okay.
Yep. And like I said, if any of you guys wanna meet out on the property, I get telework on Wednesdays, I'm there, so.
So just, I have a general question, just because this is the first time I've sort of looked at this and trying to understand. I mean, what we're talking about is whether the road that we're discussing is the right way to connect these areas. Is that what we're discussing?
I believe that's, and I don't wanna speak, and he can, I believe they're expressing their concerns that there should not be a road that comes out onto Kirshner Road to carry this additional traffic coming from that development is what I understand.
That would be, and I understand for your code that you need 2 entrances, you know, there's another section there. I know he's blocked out by a house, which is why he didn't use that back portion. So up here where he could have hooked back onto the drive. If you see where he's got his shading come out, I'm assuming some sort of stormwater up on across the top.
Up here?
Yeah, because he doesn't own that last little triangle piece. So you'd have to buy out that little triangle piece to then connect there and you get your 2 exits versus putting a new road. But that's a whole nother circumstance that they'd have to iron out, because that is somebody else's property.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah,
Yeah.
we can't force that. so.
Yep.
Okay.
It's not that Shrewsbury Township's requiring 2 exits to the
It's
development,
theirs.
because it's New Freedom Borough's
Correct.
ordinance.
Township does
So the only way
too,
Phil can get this done is to have this second.
And we're not fighting with the houses. We know New Freedom has already improved the houses. It's so much, it's the road going on to a road that already is not adequate. It's in what I put in my eyes. We call it, it's, not structurally adequate, it's, the flow through is absolutely through it.
Let me
This-
explain
This
the
is a receiving,
modification.
this is a development right receiving ground, this farm is, correct,
Right.
Phil? So eventually it's gonna get developed.
Right.
Yes.
Shrewsbury Township zoned the property as a receiving zone.
Yes.
It's their only receiving zone there is. That's where the building rights are gonna go. That's one thing. The waiver isn't about building a road. You know, that's not what this is all about. It's, am I gonna widen Kirshner? And by ordinance, the only thing I would have to widen is that portion of Kirshner on my side of the road.
Right.
So I wouldn't be rebuilding Kirshner anyway. And the only other thing would be sidewalks on my portion of that section of the road. So the waivers you're making a decision, the modifications you're making a decision on are curbs for that area of road widening that area road or sidewalks on that area road. It's not, I'm not asking for a waiver about rebuilding Kirshner Road because I would never have to rebuild Kirshner Road. So just to make it clear, that's what it's all about. Thank you.
All right, and was there anybody else in attendance? Yep, you could come up and say your name, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You guys want this paper? I'll try it.
I think we're good.
That was good.
My name's Jeff Koblinski,
Yeah,
I reside at 8 Concord Drive.
go.
And just,
Thank you.
I know back in 1979, when I moved here, the original plans for development with Concord Drive was meeting up into the woods where Washington Road is. Washington and Independence are really the only two main roads in the whole entire development. So I'm a little confused as to why, because I've already been told that Concord Drive, if it's gonna be a through street, it's gonna have to be wide. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But in this letter that I received said they just wanna extend the road, and I know this is just the stepping stone to get the foot in the door for all the other changes to come. I always wonder why they don't go up and tie into Washington, because that's a more direct road to the development.
I don't know that the planning commission would have a comment about that, unfortunately. That might have been the plan back then, but things change. I know that New Freedom Borough has changed their ordinance, correct, Phil, that's where it came about with the two exits. That may not have been a present back in the 70s and 80s.
I mean, if you look at this aerial view, you can see Concord that ends in the property just like Washington.
Yes.
Both the roads were initially supposed to go through, and neither road is gonna be widened. Concord's not gonna be widened. It's gonna be the exact same road it's there now.
Well, I was just looking at future.
There's no reason to widen.
Maybe they're gonna come back after the fact and 2-3 years later say, okay, we have to widen it now.
No, there's no reason. You wouldn't build a new development with houses and then come back and widen the road. It doesn't make any sense. The road is gonna be exactly what it is existing, except it's gonna be extended. It won't be widened.
Okay.
The only thing that we've had a discussion with in New Freedom Borough is the existing water main on Concord is cement asbestos pipe. And they've asked us if we would be willing to change that pipe when we do the work, and we said we would be. So that would be upgraded to a plastic pipe as opposed to the cement asbestos, but other than that, there wouldn't be any change in the existing
Okay.
Concord.
Yeah, that's the manhole's right in my driveway. I see them in there. So, yeah, I see a lot of other work going on. That's all I had. I just was wondering why they were coming into Concord and not maybe thinking about going to Washington. It's more, a bigger road for the development.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the audience?
Tom, is there, like, at staff, did we discuss, like, again, sort of looking ahead, whether this is the best way to be, like, considering this? I mean, I know nothing's happening because there's no,
Yeah, because,
but we are looking ahead to what is to come.
correct, because part of the problem here, when and if this becomes developed, is, the contour of the land is a
Right.
challenge. And the other thing is the critical environmental area in the township. Because I know initially they proposed coming down and across the stream and so forth, but that's not permitted because of the critical
This-
environmental
yeah,
area.
yeah.
My name is Bethany Spicer, and I live at 10 Kirshner Road. I understand what Mr. Robinson is saying about the access road up to Freedom Hills, and you guys are pretty much disregarding what Chris has stated about our road already, the traffic that comes on that road. What I'm not understanding is, you're telling me when he puts this road in, all of the traffic that's gonna be coming with his development is not gonna use the rest of Kirshner Road and continue to tear it up? And we already have a bridge on the other side, which is Railroad Borough, that is completely unsafe as it is. And as Chris stated about the flow of traffic and so forth, and the amount of accidents and how unsafe it is, again, I understand this is Shrewsbury Township, we have to deal with Railroad Borough in a sense as well. But you guys moving forward, Mr. Robinson puts this road in, you're telling me all that traffic is not gonna go Kirshner to 851 and continue to destroy our roads? As you guys approve this?
Well, again, as I had mentioned earlier, I don't know anyone disputes that Kirshner Road needs some attention, needs some work, but that's an issue for the Board of Supervisors, the Township Maintenance Department, and so forth. It doesn't affect the approval of a plan. I mean, that's not anything within the law that would allow a plan to be denied because of the condition of Kirshner Road.
So moving
Her
forward,
condition.
how do we present this moving forward about shutting down Kirshner Road or making it a safer traveling path for what's to come in the next, 5 to 8 years?
Reach out to me. I can give you my card, my email, phone number, and we could talk about it and go from there.
Thank you.
So, yep, sure.
I mean, so I guess the only thing I'm trying to understand is, so the widening of, like, we're gonna, if we approve the modificate, like, say we're not gonna make them widen Kirshner Road.
Yeah. And the reason being is there is no development. If this was
Totally
being
understand that.
subdivided and there were new lots being created, then we could take a look at that and we could address it.
And so will we still? I guess the thing I wanna make sure is that by approving these modifications now, that we haven't closed the door.
No, because it's only for this particular plan. So if
Okay.
they go to do a new subdivision, they have to submit a whole brand new plan.
And then we can talk about whether we need to widen the road.
Correct.
And then,
A new plan, they'd have to go through all this again.
and the environmental assessment.
Correct.
Because these are the two that okay.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to be clear about that.
Yep.
So I guess the other thing I would say then to residents is that when that development comes, we are gonna look at these things again.
Right.
Right,
We'll
Todd?
make sure
So
it complies with the
the
ordinance.
fact that this is not happening tonight, the fact that we're gonna let it go forward as it is, does not mean that it won't be reviewed again when the development starts to be planned. So I guess that was the piece that I feel like was missing here. I just,
Understood, yep.
if that makes anybody feel any better about that. But I also think, though, connecting with Todd about the state of Kirshner Road, that's a different issue and still something that we should follow up on and look into.
Certainly.
Were there any other comments? Anybody else who would like to speak? All right, any further discussion by planning commission members? All right, and then would somebody like to make a motion on the modification requests?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we recommend the current modifications for the New Haven plan to the Board of Supervisors for approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and then the pending plan report was attached for the planning commission members. Any questions on that? All right, so then we'll move on to zoning hearing board section. And we have RM New Freedom.
Again, the exhibit I given you shows you exactly what we're doing. We're connecting to Kirshner Road. Kirshner Road is actually in the critical environmental area. So there's no way for us to connect to it unless we connect to it, and we're trying to do it. And as Todd explained, we've spent 2 years trying to resolve what's the least intrusive way to connect to Kirshner Road. And this is the latest version. We were going down across the stream, further out and connecting. We've been through all sorts of cycles. There's about a 20-foot area that we will be actually connecting to Kirshner. It'll be on the outside of the critical environmental area. The road itself is in the CEA. The stream is on the opposite side of the road. So we just have to make this connection. There's no way to put future development rights on this property if we can't get in to this area. It's not a receiving zone anymore, because this is the only contact point we can make to get onto that property. So it's a de minimis amount. I mean, we're only a few feet of ground that we're moving. We're on the far side of the CEA, and there's no other way we can use this property if we can't make that connection to the road. And as far as widening, the ordinance wouldn't make us rebuild all of Kirshner Road if we did develop it, and I don't want to make a big point of this. The only thing that we'd have to do is our portion of it. And, if someone says we need to do that, that's great, but again, Kirshner Road is really in the CEA, as you can see.
if I may, just for the public, so that if you're not familiar with the critical environmental area, that's a requirement where you have to be a minimum of 100 feet from any stream, pond, seep, or edge of a stream bank. So this meanders down through here, and that extends that critical environmental area boundary following this line right here. Okay.
Right.
So it's just this small section in which he's asking for variance to the zoning ordinance.
So, are we building the road now?
Concord, yes, we are building it now.
We are building the road now.
Yeah.
So actually, going back to what I said before, we can't really look at this again. I mean, when
As
the
far as the road, correct.
Yeah, I think this is the final time for this piece.
For this piece, correct.
When we come in for development, when we come in to put any houses on this property, we're gonna be submitting a land development plan for this property in the township. And the only way to get on this property
No, I
is
understand.
this point that we're at.
There you go.
And it was zoned as a receiving area. It's the largest receiving area in Shrewsbury Township. And I think this is minimal to make it a place that you can use building lights.
Okay.
This has been Todd. I guess, staff was in favor of this then, or? they consider-
Generally, staff does not give any review or recommendations for variances or special exceptions.
Okay.
So, it would typically fall under generally a de minimis, very minor. But again, your recommendation, as you know, again, for the sake of the audience, their recommendation goes to the zoning hearing board, which is totally independent from the board of supervisors. The board is not involved in that decision. at
It's
all,
more of an
so-
issue sort of for Mika. Like, Mika, do you think these things reach the levels that this is something that the zoning hearing board, like, again, unnecessary hardships, the standards for the I guess that's the question I'm asking. Have we met the standards for variance here?
Right, in this case, I do think that it's, oh, thank you, that's so helpful to see that visually, yeah. So in this case, the request that's being made is dimensional, and it's a very small area, and I think it can be considered as a de minimis request, which means it doesn't have the same, there's sort of a more relaxed standard when it's dimensional and it's smaller, that you don't have to necessarily go through the same pieces to show the hardship and all of the criteria that are laid out under the variance in your
Okay.
ordinance. There's case law that supports that,
Okay. So that's the way the zoning hearing board is likely to look at it.
likely. And I didn't notice if you held this up, Phil, but that highlighted area is the encroachment, not across all of this. That would be quite different.
Yeah.
It's just right there.
Okay.
And that is the only spot you can come out.
It's the only place to get on this property.
I have a question.
And and I think that, could, if you were making a hardship argument, I won't make it for him, but
Yeah.
that's the only access point there.
If you look, when you go beyond that, there's no clear sight on that bend. You'd never get on there. And if we come further down, we're gonna be even worse. We're gonna be right in the middle of the stream.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's why I highlighted what I've done. We can't get on this property, and we're talking about a 20-foot strip on the opposite side of where that stream is. So we're already 100 foot away from the stream. It's only because of the calculated buffer. When you add the dimensions for the slope, that's where we are. And it's just, there's no way that's ever gonna be a forested buffer. It's on the other side of the road. It's really pretty minimal.
I mean, I just feel like the fact that it's de minimis is one thing, and that I think is persuasive. But the idea that we can't do it any other way, I feel like we've had a million things from the zoning, like people come and they're like, well, I can't put it anywhere else. And the zoning hearing board says, well, then you can't put it because you haven't met the standard for a variance.
Sure, but it very much depends on the set of facts.
Right,
I understand
exactly.
the
So
kind of
that's what I'm
fact
saying.
pattern that you're looking at, but,
Yeah. That
there's,
it's de minimis, that we've
Right.
designated a rural residential receiving area, it's the only way to access. These are the factors.
that's right.
Right.
Okay. All right.
All right, Any other discussion, comments from planning commission? Did you have
I have a
No,
question.
the answer.
Okay.
Phil, if you would connect, say that road wasn't there, and they connected to the, what was that, Washington?
That'd be Washington.
Independence. If that got connected to Independence Drive or Washington, and you put a development on the farm 2 years down the road, would you be able to have access from your development to those roads to get in and out without using Kirshner?
Washington doesn't give me the second access. Washington's still in that same neighborhood where there's only one access out of that neighborhood. So I'm not even sure why there was a discussion about Washington.
How about Independence? Neither?
They all connect, there's only, if you look at the New Freedom Plan, all those roads connect and there's only one way out of that neighborhood. So, it was poorly done in the 70s when it was done. And Washington, trust me, that's not the place to connect. When they dead-ended Washington, they dead-ended Concord, those were the two roads they dead-ended. If you look at that topo, Washington isn't the place to put a road. We probably will never develop, if you look in that, the plan there, and look at that part of the world, you can see it's all wooded, and that's not a place that we're probably gonna develop.
And I would guess, without having the benefit of having the New Freedom ordinance in front of me, that the requirement for the connector is to, like a collector or arterial road.
Right.
So those small neighborhood developments
Wouldn't do
don't
it.
get you, it's really the exit of that development onto a bigger road that gets you one, and you need another.
And I understand what, the concern about traffic going down Kirshner, but it doesn't, I don't know why anybody would go that way on Kirshner towards Railroad. If I were coming out of that area, I'd go Kirshner and go right up to Constitution.
Because it's a quick access and it's a safer way to pull out than
Okay.
from Kirshner to Constitution, because people think Constitution's a racetrack along with Kirshner Road. Washington is a better founded road. Kirshner's already chipping away with what traffic we have going through there.
But Washington doesn't serve,
Could you, excuse me, excuse me, ma'am, we have someone that, our recording secretary depends on these recordings.
That's fine.
So she can't hear you. What I'm asking is if you could come up and give your comments at the mic, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're sitting here stating that you're telling me when you develop this, that people that are buying your houses aren't gonna come down and go towards 851? You can't decipher that. And we also need a light put in on Kirshner and Constitution because of the way the high volume traffic already is. You can't sit here and say, well, every house I build, these buyers are gonna go from Kirshner to Constitution. You can't say that, because that's not what's going on, and that's why we're here today, because of all the houses being built in our general area. Kirshner Road is the quick access to everything. And that's why our road is being destroyed and it's out of your guys' hands at this point. But you can't tell these people that you're building all these houses and your buyers are gonna go from your road to Constitution, cause that's not realistic.
I think this would be a little different if Phil was submitting a plan to develop the receiving area, the portion in the township. But right now, he's just dealing with the secondary access for development going into New Freedom Borough.
and
So-
I agree with her. I can't say that people are gonna go to Constitution. I just know that I leave that farm 5 times a day, maybe, and I always go to Constitution. So I understand, and I won't try to say that won't happen, but I know personally, I go to Constitution, and it's just,
I think we know, I travel Kirshner quite often, and Kirshner needs some attention, but that's not a conversation for today. I think the township already knows that.
All right, any additional comments? All right, well then, would we like to make a motion on the modification request? All right, well, I'll make a motion that we recommend to the zoning hearing board approval of the variance request. Is there a motion to second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
thank you very much.
have the tourist home.
Okay, so that will be quick. So, let's see. There have been a number of reasons why rentals, long-term rentals, short-term rentals, I thought the materials that Todd sent around showing that we have all these definitions, B&Bs, tourist homes, rentals, all of this, has just been, it might be clear, but to me at least, it's confusing. And there have recently been a few violations, and I think that is possibly because there has been some confusion. But also, as Art and Todd and Cliff can tell you, there's just a lot of activity in this area anyway. Now that we have Airbnb and people are able to advertise more broadly, it's becoming an issue more often. And at this point, I really do want to say publicly how much I appreciate Art and Cliff and Todd, because I've been bothering them a lot to learn about this. There's a lot to learn about these different ordinances and what other jurisdictions are doing and what the issues are. I come at it as a lawyer, but that's just one very small piece of this. There's the enforcement piece, there's impact on neighbors, there's different zones, so there's a lot involved here. And I've spent, I don't know, about a week or a week and a half just trying to learn a lot about this. And I think what I wanted to say is, what I've learned is I do think with all this change, we need to revisit this as a township, and decide what our policy is, what we want it to be on these rentals, and then craft an ordinance that is clear and fair to everybody to reflect what we decide the policy is. And then I think to decide what the policy is not something we can do tonight. That is something that I think requires research. Cliff is working for a number of municipalities and has a pretty good sense of what's going on. Todd pulled up a number of ordinances today for neighboring jurisdictions. Art spent 2 days at a conference where they talked a lot about this. So what I would like to suggest or propose is that maybe it's a planning commission recommendation, I guess Todd is the way to do this, that we gather a subcommittee of people who maybe would include members from our planning commission. I would very much like to participate in that. Maybe members of the Board of Supervisors, if that's appropriate. And maybe at some points along the process, gather feedback from people who are actually involved in this. Because what I've learned from talking to Cliff and many people were allowed to rent. People are allowed to rent, and it's likely that they are renting for all sorts of terms. Maybe sometimes for 2 months, maybe sometimes for 2 years, maybe sometimes for 2 days. And we don't ever enforce that because unless somebody calls and there's a complaint, there's no reason to know. And as Cliff pointed out as the zoning enforcement officer, there's no way for me to know that unless I sit outside their door and count how many days somebody stayed or didn't. There's no way for me to know that. So I think what we need to do is we need a policy that we think is enforceable and fair, and that's going to require bringing people together. And the residents that are actually doing it, it might be good, not through the whole process, but at some points in the process to gather information also from them about what their experience is. And then that subcommittee should come to some conclusion about what our policy should be. Hopefully staff would then help us write or revise our ordinance to reflect what we think our policy going forward. Art made the point today that it's really important that our policy be proactive. There's a lot of change that's continuing to come, even if we're not seeing it immediately. But at this conference, you can hear about, out-of-state owners buying up properties and doing these sorts of things. And then at the same time, you've got people who are already renting who don't understand, if I can, grandmother comes and stays to see her new grandbaby for the weekend, why is that a problem, right? And it might not be. So the point is we have to sort of look at all that. And maybe there's different impact in different zones. Some in the ag zone where everything's so spread out would be very little impact, but impact in more densely populated areas we might decide is a problem. But the point is all of this requires, I think, research and discussion that cannot be handled tonight. So I think that is the way to move forward.
Yeah, if I can just add on to what Tricia talked about. We've done this in the past, the very same concept. In fact, Tricia was part of that process.
Yeah, which one? I couldn't remember which one
We did multiple updates.
Okay, over 15 years, I think I've done this a couple times. I couldn't even remember what I'd done it for.
In fact, I think it was in 2015.
Was it?
When we did it last. But there was basically an ad hoc committee appointed, which consisted of 2 planning commission members. And the reason it was 2 is so that there's not a quorum. Same with the board of supervisors, would be no more than 2. Again, so if there's no quorum, there can't be any decisions. And then staff, including Cliff as the zoning officer. So that committee got together, they went through each section, and what would happen here is they would look at that specifically. That committee would work and prepare and draft what they would propose as an amendment to the ordinance and what it should look like for short-term rentals. And then at that point, whether or not you pull in people, which can be part of the process that are affected. But at the end of the day, a proposal would come back to this same body, planning commission as a whole. You'd have, again, the opportunity to review it, comment, make additional proposed changes, and then at some point, I guess you would be at a point where you would forward it on to the Board of Supervisors for consideration.
That sound good to everybody? I don't know, do I need a motion for that? Need a motion?
Just conversation.
Just a,
But I have a comment.
Yeah.
I've said it before, and I think that short-term rentals, by and large, 95% of them are a good thing. I mean, you're gonna get the occasional partiers and there'll be complaints, but that's not usually who does short-term rentals. It's people coming in for, agro-tourism, if that's a thing, or the rail trail, or just see Pennsylvania, which is beautiful. And there's a lot of things to see in Pennsylvania. From here, you can get to some awesome places. And so I'm all for it, and I think having a unified code would help our community. It'd bring in tourists, it'd bring in spending dollars, so I'm all for it.
well, these are the kind of things I think we want to discuss in that subcommittee.
And I think it should be a motion as a recommendation.
Yeah, I think you make it, and then sort of the supervisors can consider it in a more formal way to put together that ad hoc committee.
Okay. Will they have to approve this idea for it to happen? Will the Board of Supervisors have to vote about whether there could be this committee to revisit
I
this?
think they likely will.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so I really appreciate that comment. I appreciate the interest in this. And, because again, I think it's really important that we be fair to people. I mean, I don't know, it's become a significant economic issue, I think, for a lot of people. And for me, I think it's about private property and use of it, and then also, but really protecting impact and neighbors. And I think we can find a really good way forward if we all work together.
And just to follow up on a comment you made earlier about the Board of Supervisors approving or not approving, this concept. One reason it's important to have the board involved at this point is and I don't anticipate this, but let's say the board as a majority already, we're not interested.
We have a
There's
view,
no
like if they
sense-
have a view, for
Yeah,
example.
there's no sense in, whether it's this issue or any other issue, there's no sense that you spend months
Talking about it.
talking and working on it, because
Okay.
ultimately, as you know, the Board of Supervisors are the one making
Yes.
this.
Okay.
Again,
I would hope
can't
that
speak
wouldn't
for
happen. I mean, I feel like
Again,
in
I
the,
can't speak for the board,
Right.
I wouldn't anticipate that, but again, I
Yeah.
can't speak for the board as a whole.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's reasonable to say, I feel like the board, in general, welcomes input from the planning commission. And I feel like
Correct.
that subcommittee is an extension of planning, right? Except involving more people for a broader range of views.
So, what
And there's a precedent for proceedings.
Mhm.
like-
Yes, okay.
and I would just suggest that, in your motion to make that recommendation, that you probably should include the 2 names of who would represent the planning commission.
Okay. I would like to do it. I'm happy to stand down if everybody feels strongly that I not participate, but,
No, I'm good with that.
and then I don't know who else would like to.
Sound like Ben.
Ben, are you our person? Okay.
I'll certainly do it. I'm
No-
retired, I have
No
time.
good deed goes unpunished. Okay,
He's-
so,
I have
He
time.
spoke up. I think it's a great idea, Trish. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, I agree.
It's hard to believe some of the small stuff comes into the township, and you think it's pretty minute, but when you really start diving into it, you realize that it needs to be looked into further. So
and it affects real people. you
Yeah,
know,
I
There's a
and-
lot of rules.
Yeah,
100%
there are a lot of
agree.
rules, and they can be confusing. It's funny, what I've learned in talking again about it this week is I feel like sometimes the people that are, I don't know, the people that are immersed in it every day, it looks very clear. But then if you're, I mean, I think I'm pretty informed and educated, but I'm still like, wait, this is very confusing. If we need graphs and charts and 10 definitions, maybe there's a way we can streamline it and try and make it a little bit easier for the average person, so.
I think a thing that also happens is that the ordinances can get developed over time. And
Yes.
so then you reach a certain point in time when you need to take a comprehensive look to make it all work together.
And there are unintended consequences, like, there's some sense maybe, I mean, I don't wanna go back through this much, but when we created that tourist home in the historic overlay district,
Exactly.
I thought we were doing something nice
Yes.
for somebody, for Dave Keller and that historic area and drawing tourism, but I did not anticipate that in any way that definition then could be, because we didn't extend it everywhere, that then it was somehow prohibiting what could happen in other places. So sort of a law of unintended consequences a little bit, or at least lack of discussion, or I'm happy to own it, like my lack of perspective on that as a whole. So again, like you said, Mika, like I think as time goes on and things evolve, things can get missed, or, you know, again, a law of unintended consequences when we pass one thing and we get something else, so. All right, so I'm happy to make that motion,
Yeah.
if I can make it right, that we recommend to the Board of Supervisors that they form a subcommittee to look at the issue of short-term rentals in our community. The two planning commission members are Tricia and Ben. That there will be likely two Board of Supervisors, and I would also like to recommend that at the discretion of that committee, that along the way, not the entire way, that they might consider input from members of the community who are renting their places and have maybe insight to contribute also.
Very
I'll
well
second that.
said, and I'll second it, or Ben can
Yeah,
certainly do
well
it.
said.
Okay.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, no, absolutely.
All right, then it looks like we don't have anything for old business. Any planning commission comments? All right, no correspondence, so I'll make a motion to adjourn the April 17th, 2024 planning commission meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
And thank you, Sherry. You run a very efficient meeting.